All right, back on a Young Turks. So now let's look into Rick Perry's Texas miracle. This is where they say that he has created so many jobs and it was because of his brilliant policies. Is that true? Well, I'm going to give you both sides of this equation. First, let me give you the numbers so that you know what they're alluding to. For example, Texas has created more than 260,000 jobs since June of 2009. That's a pretty good number. Furthermore, the unemployment rate is about 8.2%. That's a full percentage point less than the national average. Now, there are other boom states that are doing better, North Dakota, Wyoming, among others. But Texas is doing relatively well compared to the other states. Furthermore, Texas has 1/3 of the jobs created nationwide since the recession ended. Now, that's a number that's thrown out there most often. That's a very good number. At the same time, understand Texas is also one of the largest states. So if they're having job creation, they will have job creation larger than a state like Wyoming. In fact, a lot of states combined. But nonetheless, other larger states are not doing as well. So again, decent amount of credit there. And finally, the state's economy is growing about twice as fast as the national average. That's a very good number. So why is that the case? And are there downsides to it? Yes. First, let's look at why that might be the case. Well, Rick Perry says it's because of low taxes, reduced government spending, and regulatory easing. So not very many regulations in Texas. And he has some evidence to back him up on that. Let me present that to you. For example, they have done tort reform in Texas that limits lawsuits against doctors, and they have encouraged the expansion of major medical centers. You can make a case that that is related to one another. Furthermore, he set up an enterprise fund that gave businesses nearly $500 million in grants and financial incentives over the last 8 years to encourage their expansion. Again, you can get into the nitty-gritty of this stuff and say, did it really work? How well did it work, etc. But it's a logical case to make to say, hey, we gave some subsidies, we encouraged businesses to come here, tort reform, more medical businesses came here, etc. And when you look at his record on taxes, first of all, Texas is one of the few states that has no income tax. And then on real estate taxes, he did bring those down. So fair is fair. That's a pretty good record. Now, let's look at the rest of the story. And the rest of the story doesn't vitiate what I just told you. Both things are true, okay? But when you look at why they might have created so many jobs, well, there are also other excellent reasons for that. Well, first of all, of course, Texas is rich in natural resources, oil and gas. And this gives you a great sense of what happened in Texas. When Perry came into office, oil was about $25 a barrel. In 2008, it hit $147 a barrel. And now it's around $80 over the last 2 years. So it's basically tripled in price. Now, when a lot of the oil money goes to Texas and the oil prices tripled, obviously you're going to have a lot of advantages to that. So, for example, the oil and gas industry now delivers $325 billion a year to the state. That brings in $13 billion in state tax receipts. That's about 40% of the total that they take in. And it finances up to 20% of the budget. So if it's such a giant part of the budget and the price of it tripled since you've been in office, and obviously having nothing to do with Rick Perry, those are all global effects as to why oil prices are going up, well, obviously your budget's going to do a hell of a lot better, and your local economy is going to do a lot better. Furthermore, there's apparently a new technological revolution in drilling, and it's a combination of hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling of shale rock, and apparently that's being used almost everywhere in Texas now. Again, Rick Perry didn't invent that technology, and they're using it in Texas as much as they are in other places. It's just that Texas has more oil, and it's opened up new gas and oil fields there throughout the state, and now many residents have also received thousands of dollars in lease sales and royalties. So that brings more money into the economy. And when people spend more money, it creates more jobs as well. And also, another point, unrelated to Rick Perry, trade between Mexico and the United States obviously has taken off under the last 10 years, especially in the state of Texas. In fact, in Texas, it has grown by 60% since Perry took over. So it's another giant boost to the state that he didn't have control over. Now, the third part is quite ironic. The other reason why Texas is doing so well is because of federal spending. Because NASA's in Texas and a huge portion of our military spending goes to Texas. So the more we've increased the military spending, the more we've increased spending to NASA, Texas has done better, whether it's more jobs, easier to balance the budget, etc. Okay? So now when you put all this together, I believe results matter, and I believe in, credit where credit is due. I think that Perry could reasonably say that he did some things that helped the state of Texas to create more jobs. Was it largely because of Perry? And you could say, hey, I don't agree with Perry's tactics, so obviously I come at it from that perspective. I'm keeping it real there. But as I look at the totality of it, I see that the oil part was huge, and obviously the trade in the federal government was also large, and my estimation of it is that it is clearly larger than the parts attributed to Rick Perry. Now, the good news is that the jobs are better and the economy is moving at a higher pace. There's also bad news, by the way. In order to balance the budget, they cut billions from state funding. In fact, so many of the legislators in Texas now are worried, hey, we're doing all right in the short term while Rick Perry's going to go run for president. But what is it going to do to Texas in the long term that we have such terrible funding of education? For people over the age of 25, Texas ranks 50th in high school graduates. That's out of 50 states. They're dead last. So will that have severe consequences down the road? I'm afraid that it will. Furthermore, there's one other problem, huge disparity between the jobs. Texas has one of the highest percentages of workers who are paid minimum wage and received no medical benefits. So a lot of the jobs that have been created were minimum wage. So now it's not just education that's been gutted. Many of the social programs have been gutted, and then you have jobs that are mainly minimum wage. So that also adds to the record. Now, again, final summary for me is I'm not with the crowd that says, no, it's all baloney, it's all terrible, it's all no good. No, I think that there's a balanced, when you take a balanced look at it, I should say, I think that it's largely due to other factors, and there is a downside to it. But he did balance the budget, and by the way, the last time that he did that, he used stimulus money, about, I think, $7 billion in stimulus money to close the budget, stimulus money that he argued against. So there's huge hypocrisies here and a huge downside. I get all that, but in the end, that's why you have the numbers that you have, and you make the judgment call on it, whether you think he deserves credit or not. All right? I'm here to present the information. Now, on to other fun things that Rick Perry's doing today. Rick Perry says that we should have Predator drones manning the border. Let me give you a couple of quotes. He says, my question to this administration, how many Americans have to die on that border before you really understand we need boots on the ground? A law enforcement presence, National Guard troops, Predator drones flying in the air, that technology, that those pieces of equipment have to give real-time information to law enforcement, to local police chiefs. Now, right now, Predator drones fly near the border on just training exercises. He wants to make sure that they fly over the border as part of, day-to-day, minute-to-minute surveillance of the border. And he thinks that there's too much violence on the border, and hence we need the Predators there. Now, don't get carried away. He doesn't mean you shoot the immigrants coming in or you throw bombs, okay? At least I hope he doesn't mean that. It's for surveillance, okay? But still, it's pretty drastic to suggest, the Predator drones that we use in the military and in the Air Force be used for domestic purposes. Right? So one more quote on that. He says, I think we have to use every aspect of law enforcement that we have, including the military. I think we have the same situation as we had in Colombia. Obviously, Mexico has to prove any type of assistance that we give them. Now, that is also in reference to his idea of sending troops over the border to fight the drug cartels. Now, look, when you combine these two ideas, I think it winds up being a package that's pretty disastrous. So he's saying, let's start to use military equipment for domestic purposes, and let's use our military in law enforcement, both domestically here in the United States and across the border into Mexico, with the approval of Mexico. By the way, we used to have the approval of Pakistan for a while until we decided we didn't need their approval. Now, if you apply that to Mexico, it's 10 times more dangerous. And then we've got our military engaged with a country right next to us that's supposed to be an ally. Look, it's a recipe for disaster. So you might agree with small parts of it. Hey, we should have better surveillance on the borders. Okay, I hear you. But when you take this militaristic approach that he's taking overall, I think it's a terrible idea. All right, that's point number 2. Point number 3, Rick Perry's full of genius ideas as he immediately comes into this race packed with a lot of nonsense. So today, Rick Perry also announced that there should be a 6-month moratorium on regulations across this country, meaning you stop all regulations. Okay, let me begin to tell you what a bad idea that is. Number one, the Food and Drug Administration would have to stop approving new drugs. That doesn't really help business, let alone the fact that you can't tell what's in your drugs, if the FDA doesn't do its job. Furthermore, the USDA would have to stop checking for food safety. Also seems like a pretty bad idea. If you think that's bad, I bet conservatives don't like this. We would have to stop preventing human experimentation, because that is a regulation that you cannot experiment on human beings, whether it's cloning or anything else. Well, you take away that regulation because of Rick Perry's moratorium, well, then people can do any cloning or anything they like over the next 6 months. My guess is that his conservative base is not going to like that idea. If you continue, the EPA would have to stop monitoring poisons in our drinking water. Fun for everybody. How do you like that moratorium now? And then things that would hurt the business community. There'd be no more patents, copyrights, or trademarks that were issued. And by the way, the Department of Homeland Security would also have to stop protecting chemical facilities from terrorist attacks. These are among the many things that are laid out. Think Progress is a terrific article on this. And when you look at it in its totality, it's crazy talk. Now, it's possible that Rick Perry doesn't realize what he said. For a number of reasons, including perhaps not a great grasp of policy. Now, his staff had earlier put out a proposal that was a little different, but very, very important in that distinction. They said that there should be a 6-month freeze on new federal regulations. That's not what Rick Perry said today, okay? Now, if you did that, it would still be a terrible idea. For example, what are you going to do if you have a project like the Keystone Tar Sands Pipeline, right? Now, Rick Perry's in favor of that. So do you stop regulating it in terms of you tell them, okay, go ahead and build it? Well, you can't do that. If you stop it, then you delay their process for a whole 6 months. See, none of this makes any sense. It's just things that they throw out there to seem like they're even more right-wing than anybody else. Oh yeah, it stopped the government totally. They wouldn't do anything. We'd have poison in the water and all of our food could be contaminated and we'd have no new drugs and no new projects. Wouldn't that be awesome? Anarchy. I mean, if you think that plays to your right-wing base, you might actually be somewhat right, but it's a terrible idea. And we can't have people who are running for president, one, not understand the distinction between incredibly important different proposals. So, I mean, I would ask Rick Perry, were you stupid and you said the wrong proposal and you meant what your staff told you to say? Or are you going to stick to your guns and say we should have no regulation whatsoever for 6 months and have total anarchy in the country? All the insider trading you want, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe he'll love that. Or do you not know any of the proposals? And if you do know them, do you understand how damaging they are and how unrealistic and ridiculous that is if you're running for president? The answer is probably both. He's like, didn't know that, got the policy a little wrong. I wish my staff would have tweeted that to me on the tweeter. But other than that, sure, yeah, I'm sticking with it, man. No government for 6 months. It's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody grab your guns. This guy, man, he's fascinating. He's dangerous. All right, I got to do non-Rick Perry stories. Let me take a break and come back and tell you other news. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, the lovely and brilliant Anna Kasparian joins us.
Howdy.
How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Today's a very good day at TYT.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Do you know why?
I know
All right,
why.
Hater over here, so don't pay attention to him. TYTU hit 10,000 subscribers. I'm plugging this in almost every show that I possibly can.
Okay.
We talked about in the beginning of TYTU Today, which airs live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern.
So you can look forward to What to Flick later in the week where Anna pops up and is like, did you know TYTU passed 10,000 subscribers?
Don't hate.
Okay. All right, that's lovely, and I'm very happy about that. And you guys are doing great stories there. Now, I am prepared to learn about how broken our system is.
Are you prepared?
Yes, because the Anna Hour is now, at least the first third of it, is a tutorial on all things wrong in the country. Okay, but usually it winds up being 2/3 of the show. But yes.
No, you're so full of it. How many sex stories do you want in 1 hour?
12.
God.
Okay, it's not that I want the sex stories. They're all good, yes.
Well, Anna's going to change it to the mechanics hour. Oh, she's going to fix things.
Oh, mechanic hour, get it?
Oh, that was so cheesy. That was
had
such a jank joke.
We had banana before, come on.
Okay.
Banana hour I like.
Yeah.
And I don't find cheesy, believe it or not.
How would Tim Pawlenty deliver that joke? It's going to become the mechanic hour.
I love the leaning in and the hand gesture that goes along with it.
Okay. Anyways, all right, let's do it.
All right. I want to start off with an article that was written by the Washington Post, and they focused on a suburb in D.C. Known as Great Falls. And the disparity of wealth in Great Falls versus the rest of the country is absurd. Okay, so what's happening in Great Falls is you have all of the private contractors living there, people that are making huge profits off of the war. For instance, over the past 10 years, the income of people living in that area has increased by 32%, while at the same time, in the rest of the United States, you see people that are living in poverty.
Well, it must be because they've got some new ingenious businesses that are doing well in the free market, right?
Right. Except no, these are people who are doing jobs and getting paid a tremendous amount of money because they're contracted either by the military or by the Pentagon to do work specifically for the war. So tech support for the war, for instance, is making a ton of money. And, you know, it's incredible because there are people within our federal government that are doing the same work and they're getting paid a lot less.
All right, fantastic. Private defense contractors have gotten rich. Well, we fixed the economy, didn't we? At least in one town that's milking off the federal government and our taxes.
Look, I bring this up. I wasn't going to do this story in the hour, but there was a quote in here written by or said by someone who lives in Great Falls, right? And she made a tremendous amount of money off the war. And her quote just symbolizes what's going on in Washington right now. She says, she was asked whether or not she believes that the economy hurt people living in Great Falls, and she says the following: I think the economy is very different in Washington, D.C. than the rest of the country because of the federal dollars. Directly or indirectly, we all work for the federal government. So it reminds me of the Obama administration. It reminds me of all the people working in government that are so, like, not only desensitized to what's going on in the country, but they're living in their bubble. They have no idea what's going on in the country. They feel like everything is hunky-dory and everything's great.
Right. So inside of D.C., everybody in the cocktail circuit's having a blast. They're making a lot more money than they used to. So it's hard for them to understand. They're like, what is everybody complaining about? Everybody I know has got 32% more money than they did last year. So what's all the hubbub about, right? But look, I'm not even saying that to make fun of them or to criticize them that much. It's natural that whatever bubble you're in, you think that that's the whole world. That's why Lindsay Lohan thinks that she's like the greatest person ever, because everybody around her tells her, Lindsay, you're the best, you're the greatest, etc.
Right.
And it creates this false impression, right? And in their little world of Washington, everybody's stinking rich. So, and they don't know people who are unemployed. They don't know how bad it hurts, right? And look, it might be kind of a surprising story here if you think, you know, the stereotypically political things of, oh, well, the libs like big government and you guys are libs, etc. No, we don't want our tax dollars being wasted at all. Why would we want that, right? I don't want big government for the sake of big government. If government is doing an investment in like kids' education, I think that makes sense because I think it's going to make the whole country richer and helps our citizenry. If government is making a big investment in the defense industry that gets people killed in senseless wars that never get resolved, then I hate big government. I don't want that kind of government. All it does is enrich these people that live near Washington, and then a lot of them will then turn around and go, oh, can you believe big government? I'm in favor of the free market, when they don't have anything to do with the free market. All that they're doing is leeching off of us.
By the way, they're bracing themselves for deep cuts in defense spending. You know, because the super committee is going to cut spending in several different places, but the last place that the committee is really going to focus on cuts is defense spending. So they don't have to brace themselves for anything.
Yeah, look, I read another article today about how, oh, well, you know, you guys think that this was a liberal. Oh, you think Obama got a bad deal, but look, in that upcoming deal in the Super Congress, there's deep cuts in defense spending coming. Really? On which planet? Yeah. The two words have never been more appropriate here. Doubt it. Okay, not going to happen, man. You look, again, I say it ahead of time. If there's gigantic cuts in defense, I'll come out and say I was wrong. But that's not how it's going to work. You know that the day after the super committee got announced, I read an article about how the defense contractor lobbyists had rolled up their sleeves. They were like, oh, let's go to work on these homes. Okay, somebody pass me a blowtorch and a lead pipe and a bag full of money. Forget the lead pipe, let's just give them the money. You know what they're doing? They're making it rain. They're going inside Washington like they do with strippers. And they're like, oh, no, you're not taking away defense contractor money. No, you're going to hit the middle class again. That's what's going to happen.
Of course, and we're seeing that throughout the country. All right, Antonio Villaraigosa, the mayor of Los Angeles, is really coming through for the not the country, but the city. Okay, I'm really happy about this story because one of the issues.
What's he doing? Free parking?
God, if he did free parking, I would lose it. Okay.
He'd be like, oh, Villaraigosa.
I would worship him like he would be my god if he got rid of fees for parking. But anyway, Antonio Villaraigosa is actually fighting to get rid of something known as Proposition 13 in California. And what Prop 13 does is it requires a two-thirds majority vote in order to increase taxes in the country, in California. Okay, so
story's been awesome so far.
This is such an important story. Okay.
It's an important story, everybody. Concentrate.
Okay, look, the reason why California is facing such a huge economic disaster, especially compared to the rest of the country, is because you need a two-thirds majority to increase taxes in California. So what's happening? Instead of increasing taxes, what you'll see is a bunch of fees for stupid things. For instance, registering your car costs a lot more now than it ever did because you have to close the gap. You have to raise revenue. So you'll raise revenue with car registration, with more traffic citations, things like that. And at the same time, you see cuts in education, in social services, in infrastructure. California is falling apart, and it's because we are not taxing people the way that we should be taxing people.
Okay, let me, again, we live in California. Why would we want higher taxes on ourselves, right?
Exactly.
There's a reason for this, right? I'm going to give you a stat now. It's from memory. It wasn't in this article. It's based on something I read before. And you'll pound the gavel at home, okay? Before we passed Prop 13 in California, California's public school systems were #1 in the country, okay? Now, I forget where they are. They're in the 30s or 40s, and it's a disaster. And look, in my bubble, and it's not all of LA by a long shot, but in my group of friends, the idea of sending your kids to a public school is unthinkable, right? They're like, it's like torturing your kids. Like, what, are you crazy, right? And so, like, it's a disaster, the public school system. Well, I mean, what happens? If you don't have any money, because you can't ever raise taxes, and they're stuck at some level from 30, 40 years ago, well, then, obviously, something's got to suffer. In this case, it was the public school system. Right. By the way, that's what Rick Perry's doing down in Texas right now. He took all the money out of the school system. I mean, it's different because this Prop 13 has to do with taxes, et cetera. But he took the money out of the school system and to balance his budget, and he's like, problem solved. Yeah, that's why they're ranked 50th in people with high school diplomas over the age of 25.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how education is the first thing that gets cut whenever it comes to an economic mess.
Yeah. Because it's long term. And look, here's something you have to understand about both about politics and finance that is ruining our country. Okay, it's about short term, long term, right? So, for example, in finance, in the corporate world, they get paid based on quarterly results, right? So what they do is the version, a guy named, I believe, Eve Smith wrote about it today in Salon. He's filling in for Glenn Greenwald. It's a version of almost like steroids, like the weightlifting guys pump themselves up and inject all these steroids before the competition, right? And then in the long run, it does them a lot of damage. But in the stock market, you're rewarded based on, hey, at the end of the year, what was the profit? Okay, the executive gets paid based off that profit. So they're like, who cares about the long-term health of the company? Okay, short-term, short-term, short-term. Let me get as much compensation as I can. And if it collapses later, I'm not a shareholder. I don't give a shit, right? That's what the executive thinks. Now, in politics, somebody like Rick Perry and Tim Pawlenty, they're like, I'm going to run for president. I'm going to pump this thing up, make sure I got the budget balanced, right? And then later, if the education system in the state collapses, who cares? Pawlenty left a $5 billion time bomb when he left the office. It's like, technically, it's balanced the day I left. Tomorrow, you got a $5 billion deficit. Enjoy. That's why they had to shut down the government of Minnesota, because they couldn't come to an agreement on how to deal with Pawlenty's deficit mess. So that's part of the problem that we have that's structural. Steve-O.
Well, if this story's about Prop 13, let's discuss Prop 13 and what it really does. One of the main provisions is that property taxes don't go up until you sell that property. So if you and I are living next door to each other in Beverly Hills, and I bought my house 40 years ago, and I'm paying $58 a year on property taxes, you're going to pay $1.7 million in property taxes. Same houses right next door to each other, but based on when you bought it, it's totally unfair and totally it's different. So what this does is it has a massive chilling effect on transactions, especially for commercial properties. So again, back to the short-term, long-term thing, this is supposed to help people, but it actually hurts people because people are going to they can't afford to buy or sell because it impacts their property taxes so greatly.
And think about that, because conservatives theoretically hate the government meddling in affairs, whether they're business affairs, et cetera, and twisting the free market. But that's exactly what Prop 13 does, right? It totally mangles the free market and creates these weird incentives and disincentives that shouldn't normally exist, because they pass this absurd law. And now Viragosa, to get back to the original story, is saying, hey, we got to take this on. Jerry Brown, I mean, you got elected here to do bold things. What are you doing? Up and at him.
But Jerry Brown is doing the exact same thing that you see, people in the federal government doing, okay? Right now what Jerry Brown is doing is he's making cuts to every single social program you can imagine, whether it's higher education, whether it's the public school system, whether it's social workers, their benefits and how much they're getting paid. Doesn't matter. Any type of social program you see in California, it's experiencing cuts. You drive on the road, there's potholes everywhere, and that's because there's cuts to infrastructure and you don't see construction taking place to fix those potholes.
All right, last thing on this is that I'm really so far, and it's just the beginning, right? Give the guy a little bit of time. I used to say that about Obama, which made sense. Now the jury's a little bit more in. But anyway, Jerry Brown has been a pretty significant disappointment. Okay.
I thought you were going to defend him. I'm like, what are you going to do?
No. So far, I'm just saying give the guy a break because he's just got started. Right. Maybe he's working up to it or something. But, and again, the idea is this is Jerry Brown's second time around. He was governor approximately 128 years ago as well in California. He's about 247 years old. And so a lot of people thought, well, this is Jerry's last go around, so he can afford to do things that are bold. It's not like, oh, he's doing this to do well in California, then he could run for president.
Right.
Yeah, he ran for president in like 1936 already, okay, and lost. So there is no higher office for Jerry Brown, nothing he's got to play politics for, but yet here he is again. It's that fallacy of like, oh, wait till Obama's second term, when he's got nothing to lose, then he'll be bold.
Right.
Right? And so far, Jerry Brown hasn't been bold at all. So we both like that Viragosa is taking him on. So.
Absolutely, and it's unexpected, to be honest with you. Like Viragosa, he's been very hush-hush lately. There was this whole initiative of, revamping our public school system, which turned out to be a massive failure, and I'm like, he let us down. But he's coming hard. Like, he's doing, media interviews. He's being very vocal about getting rid of Prop 13, so I'm in favor of that.
Well, that's good. Look, all right, you're forcing me into another comment. Look, these politicians, they love to talk, right? So it's good that he's talking about Prop 13 because somebody's got to. So that's why we're in favor of it.
This is a proposition that passed in 1978. Okay, every politician has been very quiet about it up until now. No. So it's something. It's something.
No, it's definitely something, right? But Viragosa is going to run for some other office. Probably since he didn't run for governor's office, there's been enough time between now and the sex scandal that keep it real. That he now thinks given enough time, he could run. Probably he'll run for Senate. So now he's trying to be populist and get that progressive vote in California, because obviously it's very hard for a Republican to get elected in California. He's a Democrat. He needs Democratic voters. So he's going to do this. It's smart. It's good. Will anybody ever actually do anything about it? It's like Obama. I told you yesterday's, they call it tough talk. The tough talk was weak sauce, if you ask me. But it's, I guess, a little tougher than when he was doing the budget negotiations. Why? Because it's campaigning. During the campaign, Obama's like, yeah, middle class, we got to raise taxes on the rich. During budget negotiations, like, raise taxes on the rich? You kidding me? Of course I'm going to give that away. Of course I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do tax cuts for the rich. So I'm keeping it real. That's why Viracos is back out and making those comments.
Right, you're probably right about that, but I saw it as a good story for the time being. Let me be optimistic.
Okay, God bless.
Okay. All right, let's do a fun story. PayPal founder Peter Thiel is donating $1.25 million to create a libertarian island. It'll be a sovereign island. It'll have absolutely no rules. Let's see how that'll work out for you. I'm looking forward to it. No welfare, no building codes, no minimum wage, few restrictions on weapons. Basically, I can't wait for this to fail.
Absolutely. No, this is great. I saw the headline, and I immediately thought, I like to do this sometimes with stories. I'm like, I'm going to guess who it is. Peter Thiel. And I read it, and I was like, yes, Peter Thiel. Because I know he's a libertarian that's gonzo, that he thinks like there should be no rules whatsoever, Ayn Rand to the max. And look, for a guy who's really smart in investing, his political ideas are so childish, it's sad. Okay, there's no building code. So you can build any height you like, and you can build any color you like. I like freedom, so I hate the building codes that say, hey, you can't paint your house purple or pink or whatever, right? So I'm with you. But it also has no building code to make sure it's safe for earthquakes, or tsunamis, or whatever might hit your tiny little island. And so if an earthquake hits it, and not only is your building affected because it gets destroyed because there was no building code, but it falls on top of another building. Oh, it affects other people on the island. Oh, I didn't think about that. So, and there's no building code. So you had this lovely view on an island until somebody built a building that was twice as high right in front of you. Oh, it affects the other guy. But luckily you both have weapons and no other rules.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait because this is a perfect, look, they're going to prove that their ideology is wrong. That's why I'm really looking forward to it. Like, of course there's going to be the building codes. Of course it's going to be a disastrous island, physically speaking. But I can't wait to see their ideologies fail right in front of not only their own eyes, but in front of everyone else.
Right. And by the way, here's another problem. What happens when a country like North Korea is like, oh, fun little island, lots of valuable stuff on it, doesn't have any treaties, doesn't have any rules, it's too small to have sophisticated weapon systems. It might protect you against pirates or things like that, but against the whole country, North Korea has a lot of military product, right? North Korea comes back and goes, well, I'd like it. I think I'm going to take it. What are you going to do then, Peter Thiel?
Sorry.
Okay, what happens when Kim Jong-il comes and says, I'm going to attack it? Then Anna and I can't wait. And by the way, it's never even going to get built. It's a fantasy. It's a pipe dream. There's no way. I would love it if they built it, because I'd love to see the disaster and the anarchy that ensues, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a clown enterprise led by clown people. They're not going to build it. Who you know why it's not going to get built? It's not that Peter Thiel and some other clowns won't give money to it, right? Peter Thiel has so much money, he can give all the money that he wants to it. As soon as the first guy goes on there, it's like, all right, great, I'm looking to build, and wait, no rules? So what happened? Wait, let me get this right. The minute they put a second thought into it, they're like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's going to be a great disaster. At least they're going to lose a lot of money doing it.
It's going to be great. Looking forward to it. Should we take a break?
Can't wait.
You know what, though? Here's what Peter Thiel says to us.
To all the non-believers. How did that? To all the non-believers. Especially you, Tom Jackson.
Especially you, Anna Kasparian. All right, we'll be back.